The seconds are out. The crowd is waiting. The boxers are getting ready to battle. Time for another edition of the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast with your presenter, Greg Rashid.
Well, I want to say swati krap to everyone out there. This is Greg Rashid with another edition of the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast, heard by many people at their convenience on various platforms on the internet, but a lot of folks listen every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Mountain Time on KUHSdenver.com, created by the one and only Henry Archuleta. And I want to say hi to all my friends in the Colorado region. I keep saying I'm coming back there to visit. I am this year. I'm going to come back there. But anyway, I'm here in beautiful Bangkok, Thailand. Loving it here. Nice and warm as always. Always hot here. And we're going to have a great show as we always do. If you're new to the program, what we do on here usually is fantasy fights. And if you're listening to the program, you're a boxing aficionado. And yeah, I know you sit around and you wonder, what would happen if Muhammad Ali fought Joe Louis? What would happen if Mike Tyson fought Tyson Fury? And that's what we do on the show. We use different modalities to create different fights and all fantasy fights using computer games, card and dice games. But we're not doing that today. Because also what we do, we talk about real boxing. We interview fighters. We interview authors. And we have two excellent folks to talk today about their new book they have co-edited. I'm talking about Professors Rudy Mondragon and David J. Leonard. They've co-authored a book called Rings of Dissent, and it's on the University of Illinois Press. It's Boxing and Performances of Rebellion. This book is really something. This anthology is really something, and they're going to talk about it right now. I did an interview early with them, and let's get right to that interview on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. And I'm so happy to have on the program today two scholars who have co-authored a book along with another person who's not on here. The book is called Rings of Dissent. It's an anthology about boxing, and I really love this thing because there are so many anthologies out there about sports and boxing, but these two gentlemen, they hit the meat and core of what is going on in boxing, what's happened in the past in boxing. And I'm talking about, and the book is Rings of Dissent, Boxing and Performances of Rebellion. It's on the University of Illinois Press. And I'm talking about Professor David J. Leonard, who's at the Chico University, if I'm not mistaken, and also Professor Rudy Mondragon, who's at the Loyola Marymount University. I hope I got that right.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
All right.
You did.
And they got a superb anthology here. I really love this anthology, what you're talking about, the different chapters and all. And you start off, the intro, you start off with something that's very timely because you both talk about the former heavyweight champion, Deontay Wilder, who will be fighting in April with Derek Chisora. And I don't know if either one of you saw his recent interview on British television on a show called, I look at all the time, called Talk Sports, out of Britain. Did you two actually see that?
I saw it.
Yeah. I did not.
Okay.
Rudy, it's on you.
Yeah, so it's very...
Greg.
All right, because it's very timely, because you talk about Deontay, and what happens for listeners, and since you didn't see it, David, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this thing. What happens is that Wilder and Chisora are promoting their fight, and they're being interviewed by Simon Jordan. And he's the type of guy, I think he wants to be like a British Howard Cosell, in the sense that he wants to get on your skin, get on your nerves. And he challenges folks. So they're talking about the fight that's coming up in April with Chisora. And so Simon asked Wilder, Deontay, about, well, I want to talk to you a little bit about Tyson Fury. And Wilder starts saying, I'm not here to talk about that.
Hmm.
But rather than stopping it there, Simon goes on about, well, you've said a number of things about Tyson. You've accused him of cheating. And that's when Deontay loses it. And to sum it up, he starts saying, well, you don't really know about me. You don't know me as a black man, what we go through. You have white privilege. You have, he just gets into all of this. And he has some valid points, but Simon's point immediately says, like, this has nothing to do with race. This has nothing to do with that. And eventually Deontay just leaves the set. He walks out, he curses him out and all. He just leaves the set. And I want you to talk about your reaction, Rudy, to that and how it ties into the first, the introduction of the book.
Yeah. I think Deontay Wilder, we start off the book with a story about the ring entrance of Deontay Wilder because what he does in that second fight against Tyson Fury is, he's fighting in Black History Month and he's very intentional and chooses the creation of a digital entourage, and it includes Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Jackie Robinson, amongst other iconic Black liberation, Black power movement figures. And so he
Right.
chooses intentionally to do that. So he's very intentional and purposeful. And he comes into the ring with D Smoke, and it's this powerful centering of Blackness, all things Black and beautiful. And so it's the soundscape, it's the entourage that he selects and wants accompanying him into the ring. His outfit, 40,000 plus, created by Donato and Cosmo over here in the Melrose area of Los Angeles. It's a very intentional royal outfit that screams royalty and that he's a king. And so he's puts this amazing performance uh, on display for everyone to see, whether he won that fight or not, which he lost. There's a very powerful statement that he makes in this like 90-second to 2 minute ring entrance
Right.
that he curates, and that's powerful. And so connecting it, I think, to this interview that he recently did, I think first and foremost, my reaction to that is how unfair that becomes in terms of the line of questioning, how that impacts Derek Chisora, because it takes two to tango in a fight, and essentially kind of detracts away from Derek in that interview. So that's one thing that I observed
Right.
there. The other thing is Deontay Wilder, I think a lot of the time he gets also caught up, not him, but like people get caught up in that moment when he said to this day, that response that he had to Tyson Fury about like the double standards that exist in boxing when it comes to race. Floyd Mayweather has talked about those double standards. Andre Ward has talked very, very well about those double standards, about how black fighters are oftentimes expected to become the villains and they're expected to be the bad guy. And so I think often journalists want to get that out of fighters like Deontay Wilder. And I think Wilder got caught up in the moment and he got sucked into talking
Right.
about these ideas of Tyson Fury cheating in their second fight, and claims of having evidence to the matter. And so regardless of that, for me, it was the journalist kind of prying and poking and trying to get something out of Deontay and getting under his skin, which I didn't I didn't particularly think that was valuable because again, Tyson Fury wasn't the center focus of this. It's Chisora and Wilder who should have been the focus of this interview. And so tying it back to Rings of Dissent, it's moments where like fighters, I think, reinforce power dynamics and at times when fighters also deviate and interrupt from dominant scripts, dominant narratives. And Wilder, in addition to that ring entrance, he's also teamed up with fighters like Chris Arreola during the Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
During their weigh-in, they both have these signs that point to each other that say his life matters, which makes the Black Lives Matter movement something that makes people aware of the solidarity and the connection between Black and Brown, Latino, Latinx, Chicana, Chicano, Chicanx communities and the Black struggle. And so I think the book Rings of Dissent is like, how do we identify these moments of subversive resistance and dissent and we situate them as ephemeral or short-lived or like very, very quick. They don't necessarily happen um, over the course of a long time, i.e., a ring entrance that could be 90 seconds. But in those 90 seconds, we can see how some of their actions can be connected to other struggles, other solidarity movements, social movements, and how they amplify social movements that are currently in existence.
Right, definitely. You have anything to comment about that, David?
I mean, I I didn't see it, but one of the things that strikes me in the description, um, it is that so often Black athletes aren't afforded spaces of humanity, where, as Rudy said, the desire to position Black athletes as villains, as criminals, as even objects of consumption is very flattening. And so, even in these moments of frustration or anger or disappointment, um, we see a demand from Wilder to see him as a human, as someone who
Right.
was frustrated and angry that he came to talk about the current fight and was kind of it was kind of a switch, and that there was other agendas playing out, and so you
Right.
could understand why he was displeased and unhappy. And I think if we take a step back and think about being in his position and think about the anger and the disappointment we might feel, we might begin to see and reclaim these spaces and demand that we see the humanity um, of not only Wilder but so many others.
Definitely, definitely. And the thing is, I've interviewed folks for zillions of years now, and you always have publicity people usually tell you, well, don't ask her this or don't ask that, or stay on point on this. And I know for a fact with a big show like that, Talk Sports, that they
Mm-hmm.
did that. But Simon Jordan, like you're saying, both of you are saying, basically he wanted to, just poke the bear a little, see what he could do. And I don't know, Rudy, if you've seen the follow up of all this, but they have been milking that interview.
Oh yeah.
Oh
I haven't
God.
seen the follows, but I'm not
Ooh.
surprised that something like that would be like they can get multiple episodes or multiple
Oh,
taglines, headlines based on just that. And so it's like the that interview becomes like hyper commoditized to get more content and
oh goodness.
more views. One thing that I did want to mention too, especially with David talking about the humanity of boxers, like one thing that I noticed was how Chisora is Deontay's opponent. This is the person that he's trying to beat across from him. And what he does when Deontay is talking, he pushes him a glass of water. And I thought that
Right.
was subtle, but it was such a really cool
And tissues
moment.
too. He gets them like some
And
tissues.
it
Yeah,
was
he does
it
that.
was a really tender, cool moment where like they're opponents, but there was a connection there that I can see on the screen happening before our eyes that I thought was meaningful.
Definitely, definitely. Now, getting back to the book, because when I was reading the book, at first I said, well, how did they know about this interview since this book was written last year? And actually, wasn't the book actually written during the pandemic?
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's just amazing how timely it is. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and Rudy can tell the story, but yeah, this book, um, we were kind of finishing it, having received all the pieces and edited and gone through right when the pandemic was starting. And so when we sent it off to our what was the first intended publisher, we kind of looked at our introduction with COVID just starting, and and needed to think about, well, how is this global pandemic affecting the rings of dissent, the
Right.
rings that uh, form community, the rings that provide spaces of labor, the rings that are also exploitative. And so we wanted to think about what it means in this moment to have these spaces shuttered, closed, and then, you know, as things happen, uh, things didn't work out with that publisher, and so then after some road work with boxing and lots of kind of efforts, we found another publisher, and then had to kind of revisit. And so that was why we had to have a coda at the end to kind of reflect on what was going on. Well, we reflect on the Olympics and the movement for Palestine and Ukraine.
Right.
And I think in all of the pieces and what we try to do in the book is to show the way that boxing has always been a space that leads us back to larger issues, larger themes, larger realities, whether it be the ongoing assaults on immigrants or police brutality or any number of other issues. And so going back to even the interview with Deontay Wilder, you know, his connection or bringing into focus issues like white privilege speaks to the ways that boxing both reflects and allows us to engage in these larger social conversations as boxers are doing themselves.
Definitely. Now, something that's, I caught in the book, you mentioned it, it's kind of throughout the book, and I had never thought about this as a simple kind of statement. But the whole thing you both talk about is that basically those that say that boxing are dead are usually white men in America.
Mm-hmm.
And because all my, the friends I have in America who are black, they never mention that. And being over here in Thailand, this is Muay Thai boxing here, but boxing, as far as what we're talking about today, is huge over here. It's huge in Japan. It's huge, all over Asia. And then when you get to Europe, especially in Britain, Germany, it's huge. And so I want you just to talk about that, because I had never even thought about, and I should know better, that's who I only hear, who the only people I ever hear talking about boxing is dead is usually some white guy just saying, oh, boxing's dead.
Yeah, and I think that's when it comes to like whiteness and like white middle class standards of consuming a sport like boxing, I think one of the things that we were mindful about is boxing has always experienced a variety of different moments where people say it's dead, it's not, the UFC is making more money. It's always kind of in the financial terms,
Right.
but it's also, I think, connected to boxing is so narrative dependent. The stories of the boxers are what hook people to the sport. So if you have a deep, intimate connection and relatability to a Deontay Wilder or to a Julio Cesar Chavez because of your ethnicity, because of your culture, because of your race, then boxing is alive and well. And boxing, mega fights especially, have always made a substantial amount of money for those that control boxing, whether it's the promoters, the sanctioning bodies. And so I think when we think about, for example, Oscar de la Hoya, like he's a Mexican fighter, but oftentimes he was very much so imagined as a very well-behaved, in close
Right.
proximity to whiteness. He's a good-looking young man. He's articulate. He is a gentleman of the sport, and you know that's something that gets embraced. And during the Oscar era, that boxing time was alive and thriving. During the Tyson era, it's similar, it's thriving, but again, we see him as more of a villain. It's the
Right.
sport is alive, but we're like, okay, well, this is the boogeyman, this is the bad guy. And so I think when it comes to like white middle class standards of consumption, especially after the 1970s, where like boxing really begins to take a demographic shift to Black African American boxers and brown boxers, whether it be Filipino boxers, Mexican boxers, etc. And so even though like throughout boxing's history, those fighters have always been a part of the makeup
Yeah.
of boxing, the landscape of boxing, but really we see this demographic shift to this current moment where we see a lot of Eastern Europeans now too, but a lot of Mexican, Latino, Filipino, Black boxers. And so we might not vocalize it, but I think there's always this search for a great white hope, and it's got to be a great white hope from the United States.
Definitely. Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm glad you brought up the Eastern Europeans because when I read their bios of some of these boxers, and some of them that are not even big names, the connection between how they were raised and how a Latino or Latino boxer or a Black boxer was raised, it's the same thing. And you kind of mentioned this in the anthology. Could you talk a little more about that?
But about which part in particular?
How the connection, you have Eastern Europeans, Black
Hmm.
fighters, Latino fighters, brown fighters, but they come from the same type of backgrounds when you read their
Oh, I see.
bios.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for one of the things that I've learned over, I mean, I've been a boxing fan since I was 6 years old, but one of the things that I learned as I got older was this connection to like social class.
Right,
And boxers come from whether it's the barrio for Latino fighters, the ghettos for Black fighters, the um, working class communities, whatever, however you want to call these neighborhoods that fighters are coming out of, they're coming from the margins of society, and you have the white fighters who come from economic struggle that are utilizing the sport of boxing as a potential vehicle out of their economic struggle. But one of the things that we do talk about in the book too is, boxing is a winner take all capitalist market, capitalist sport. And when you think about the 25,000 total professional boxers that are currently registered on BoxRec around the world, when I turn to my students and I ask them how many boxers actively boxing right now can you name, and students struggle to name me five.
right. Yeah,
And I think that to me shows the economic aspect. So it's a great way to lure fighters from working class, economically marginalized communities to fight because there might be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But for the majority of fighters, it's actually not going to ever happen in terms of making life-changing money. And so it's very tense space that we find ourselves in because even my father, I remember one time I had a conversation with my father. My father thought that all fighters made good, life-changing money, and that's just not the case, not even for like 1%. It's probably less than 1% of fighters who will ever make the type of money that Canelo,
right.
Floyd, Manny Pacquiao made in the latter part of their career. Not even consistent throughout their whole career, but the latter part of their career, and it's not available to everybody in the ecosystem of the boxing world. I don't know if you have anything to share, David.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and that comes with a lot of risk, a lot of
Mhm.
danger. It comes with uh, not just short term but long term physical harm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And so I think thinking about uh, what is being sold, um, a dream, um, and what is, as Rudy said, what's on the other side. But it's kind of also at the same time understandable how boxing, the industry, uh, sells that to those whose economic opportunities have been foreclosed by oppression,
right.
by divestment from communities, by war. we're talking literal war zones, and it speaks to, and this is, the history of boxing is a history of, you know, those coming from marginalized and oppressed communities. Whether we're looking at the late 19th century and early 20th century or into our present day. And so I think that's very much the story. And boxing, the industry, from media to promoters, have leveraged that as part of what it's selling, as part of the narrative.
Go
ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I want to say this, that last year, the WBC, World Boxing Commission, they had their convention over here in Bangkok, and I went to it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I saw, and you kind of touch on it in the anthology, but I saw the corruption up close and personal. And I want you to comment on that, because people don't understand the whole thing of what these committees, not only the WBC, but IBF, WBA, IBO, the whole thing of sanctioning fees and what they do to some of these boxers as far as just taking, money from them with no problems. And can you talk about that real briefly?
Yeah. Yeah, and I like when we think about the sanctioning bodies, WBC being one of them, like you said, IBF, WBA, WBO, these emerged in the the middle of the 20th century, and they replaced the National Boxing Association Championship. They replaced the New York State Athletic Commission Championship. These are belts that Muhammad Ali and the era prior to him were fighting for to gain notoriety. So the belts have always symbolized validation. They've symbolized cachet. It increases their value. So it's like when I think about the sanctioning bodies, I'm like, okay, they do this work in terms of giving fighters a social standing and an increase in their value, which they need in terms of becoming the Deontay Wilders, the Julio Cesar Chavez, the Manny Pacquiao's. The other thing is, like, when we look at closely at what the sanctioning bodies do, and you look at how much money they take away from the fighters, and it's this kind of pay to play system where the sanctioning bodies are taking 3% from the gross purse of the champion and also the challenger. And so if you make $1 million for your purse, 3% of that is going to be given to the sanctioning body off the top, right? Whatever the commission has you contracted at fighting for in terms of your boxing purse. There are caps. I think it's capped at $300,000. Sanctioning body can't take more than $300,000. But Terrence Crawford, for example, recently fighting against Canelo, fought for all 4 belts, and he didn't pay the WBC.
I was at the WBC the day that they took his belt. I was there.
They stripped him.
They stripped him that day. I was there, and they just stripped Shakur Stevenson. Stripped him last week.
Yep, and there's allegations and there's connections and dots to be made because Terrence Crawford and Shakur Stevens are really good friends. And so if you look at Terrence Crawford and Canelo, like, that's 4 sanctioning bodies that are potentially going to charge you 3% fee for fighting and defending that world championship belt. And so that can turn into millions of dollars that sanctioning bodies can get from mega fights like the Canelo and Crawford fight. So there's always been debates about, for me personally, when I think about my academic research, Rings of Dissent, if this is the ecosystem that we currently have in boxing, I do think that I don't think the sanctioning bodies are going to go away anytime soon, but how can we begin to think about the sanctioning bodies as contributing some of that money that they do get from sanctioning fees to things like pensions for fighters?
And that's a funny thing. I'm glad you said that, because that's what they were talking about at the convention. But when people have asked them, well, show us the documentation, because you're saying you're giving us to old fighters and all, they never have the documentation. They never have that. And that's a shame. And we have 5 minutes here, and I wanted to really get into the women in boxing, because those two chapters about that I really love. Can you sum that up? And can I get you to back on here again?
Oh, I would love to be back.
Of course.
Yeah, next month, because I really want to get you back on, because we're just warming up. We're just really warming up. And when it comes to boxing, we can talk about this all day. But yeah, can you talk real quickly about, in particular, the young lady? Well, just talk about women in boxing in general. What's going on? What you got out of it from the anthology, the chapters you wrote about some of the women.
Yeah, Kaylee Reese is the fighter that we did 2 chapters on,
Right.
particularly the interview chapter with her and myself and Gay Johnson. That she's a fighter who comes from the Northeast of Eastern
Connecticut.
no, in Rhode Island in
Rhode
Providence.
Island, yeah.
Yeah. And so she's a Cape Verdean and Wampanoag, so she's a Black Indian. She identifies as a Black Indian, and the first time I saw one of her fights was on HBO. The first time 2 female fighters were on a live broadcast for
Right.
HBO, and she was fighting against the First Lady Cecilia Brækhus from Colombia by way of, I think, Denmark or Finland or something like that. She's adopted. But I thought it was so fascinating that Kaylee entered the ring as if she was entering a sacred space. She was entering like a
Right.
powwow. She had like a grand entry, and so that was one of the reasons why I reached out to her to learn more about her ring entrance and how she uses her ring entrance to put her indigenous and her indigeneity and her blackness on full display as a multiracial woman who culturally grew up going to powwows. She brings that culture with her to the fight. I've also learned a lot, and it's in the interview and in the book chapter, in terms of like just how much women are paid in boxing, and
Yeah.
there's still a very large gender pay gap. There's still inequality that exists. Fighting for a world championship title for a male is 12 rounds, 3 minutes per round, and females fight 10 rounds, and each is 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so,
Armando Serrano, she really wants that. She's been pushing for that for years, to get 3-minute rounds and stuff. And I have to, I'm sorry I have to cut you off, but
no, that's okay.
because we only have 3 minutes now. Can both of you sum up what you wanted people to get out of the anthology, what you want, you're hoping to accomplish? And I'm saying again, next month, please, I want to have you both on here again.
For sure. Yeah, I'll say real quickly, I think for me, this book is a way to give audiences, readers, this perspective of how in boxing, beyond Muhammad Ali, there have been fighters who have used their platform to challenge the status quo. And so I think this is a good start for people who want to read about those types of stories. And it's not your traditional way of protest or resistance. It's these nuanced ways that boxers use their platform to claim dignity, to fight against oppression and power. And I just want folks to know that this is a good read to look and learn about different experiences in the boxing world.
Yeah, I think that's really important, to highlight the different ways that boxers, athletes, fans, can leverage their positions towards social change. And I think we can find inspiration in boxing. I think so often, and this gets back to your question about boxing being dead, but so often I would say the white left looks down upon boxing or uses boxing to as part of a kind of morality play.
Oh, yes. I can tell you, and the next time we talk, I will tell you stuff, because me being a longtime activist, I can tell you stories about what people say to me when they find out that I love boxing.
Yeah, and so I think for us, it's to see how boxing is a space of, to use the words of Robin Kelly, who we quote, is a space for the articulation of freedom dreams.
Right.
And too often both in academia and outside, we hear people talking simply about boxing as a place of nightmares, and surely there's much to critique, but we found power in the stories and in this history that we bring to life through our amazing contributors.
You do a superb job with this book, and I'm just so grateful you're on here today. And we're going to get you back on talking about Rings of Dissent. It's on the University of Illinois Press. I've been talking today with David J. Leonard and Rudy Mondragon. We're going to have both these experts, these scholars on here again. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
And you can get the book on Amazon and something. Now, I really don't want people to go to Amazon, but other places you can get the book. University of Illinois Press. You can definitely do that.
Go right to the source.
That's right. That's the thing. So thank you very much. I'll be talking to you to schedule our next chat. Thanks so much.
Sounds good.
Really enjoyed talking to them. That a great book, great anthology, Rings of Dissent. And we're going to have them on next month. They will be back on again. So if you have questions for them, please send them to me wherever you listen to the program and get the book, get the anthology. It's more than, because like they both were saying, and it's mentioned in the book many, many times, boxers are more than just men and women up there punching themselves. They have these backgrounds, they have opinions, they have, political histories. I mean, it's just fascinating when you really get into boxing. That's what I really love about it. But anyway, we're going to have them back on. But right now, we have to change modes here because there's been a little argument going on between some of our folks in the studio here. And it's all about something that happened early in the week where Conor Benn, some people believe he betrayed Eddie Hearn, which, and decided to sign with Dana White. And it's a heated discussion we'll have on here on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast.
Welcome to the debate. Today, we are looking at a moment that has fundamentally fractured the landscape of professional boxing. It is Friday, February 2026, and the news broke just hours ago. Conor Benn, the British welterweight star, has severed his decade-long ties with Matchroom Boxing and Eddie Hearn to sign a promotional deal with Dana White's Zuffa Boxing.
And wow, what a Friday it is. We aren't just talking about a fighter changing promoters here. This is, as Ariel Helwari described it this morning, this is going for the jugular. It is a hostile takeover. Based on the confirmed reports, we are looking at a one-fight deal valued in the 8 figures. That is over $10 million for a single night's work.
It is certainly a massive sum, but the central question we are debating today, based on all the statements released, is really one of character versus commerce. I will be arguing that this move is a morally bankrupt betrayal of a promoter who literally saved this fighter's career during his absolute darkest moments.
Right, and I'll be taking the stance that this is a brilliant, necessary triumph of athlete agency and business disruption. Conor Benn has correctly identified that Zuffa is the future, Matchroom is the past, and he has made the only logical move available to a prize fighter in his prime.
Well, I see why you might think that looking purely at the spreadsheet, but let's dive into our opening positions here. To understand why this is a disgrace, you have to look at the history between these two. Conor Benn has been with Matchroom for a decade. Literally since his debut in 2016. He didn't just grow up under that promotional banner. He was protected there.
Mm-hmm.
We all remember the dark times when Benn failed those voluntary drug tests for clomiphene, sparking that grueling 2-year battle with the authorities. The entire sporting world turned its back on him. But not Eddie Hearn. Not Frank Smith. They stood shoulder to shoulder with him. Hearn put his own reputation on the chopping block, fighting the British Boxing Board of Control when the Chris Eubank Jr. fight was canceled in 2022. Hearn took the arrows for Conor Benn.
He did, yes.
And how does Benn repay that decade of blind, unwavering loyalty? With a lawyer's letter. No conversation, no handshake. He explicitly refused Hearn's request for a basic phone call to say goodbye. That isn't just business, that is treacherous. Even Hearn, in his interview with IFL TV Today, sounded completely broken by it. He said, and I quote, "I blame myself. I misjudged the character. That is the heart of my position. This is a staggering failure of character."
I hear you, I really do, but I just don't buy that emotional narrative. You are painting a picture of a family dynamic, but this is a cold, hard industry. It's prize fighting. Let's look at the economics, which you are completely glossing over. We are talking about an 8-figure deal. Over $10 million for one single fight? That is life-changing leverage. Do you honestly think Matchroom was offering that kind of upfront cash?
They were offering a career.
They were offering what they always offer. As the manager for Chris Eubank Jr. noted regarding this news, everyone follows the pound note. That is the reality of the sport. You call it treachery, I call it market value. Was it a shock? Absolutely. Helwani admitted he thought the press release was fake when it dropped. But this is exactly how a disruptor operates. It reminds me of Nick Khan at WWE poaching Cody Rhodes from AEW. It's aggressive, it's shocking, and frankly, it's brilliant business. Ben just fulfilled his potential by beating Eubank Jr. in that stadium show last November. He is a free agent. He honored his contracts. He owes Eddie Hearn nothing beyond the paper he already signed and fulfilled.
He owes him nothing. I have to stop you there. That is a dangerously transactional way to view human relationships. Even in the business world, you say loyalty is a tool for underpayment, but in this specific case, loyalty was the only reason Conor Benn still has a career to monetize in the first place. Hearn damaged his own standing with the public to keep Benn afloat. To leave is one thing. Fighters change promoters. We know that.
Right.
But to leave without a word, to hide behind a lawyer, that is cowardly. Hearn texted him, "After everything I've done for you, I deserve a call." And Ben effectively said no. That isn't business disruption. That is a lack of basic human decency.
Or it's a necessary boundary. Hearn himself admitted in that exact same interview you just quoted. He said, "I blame myself because I forgot it was boxing." That is such a telling admission. It suggests Hearn's shock comes from a place of arrogance, an assumption that he owned Conor Benn simply because he helped him through a tough spot. He thought the relationship was a shackle. And let's not pretend Ben didn't have very public reasons to be annoyed.
What reasons? That Hearn was defending him too loudly?
No, in his interview with Fight Hub TV just recently, Ben called Hearn's media behavior nutty. He felt Hearn was spiraling in his war of words with Dana White. If your business partner, the guy who is supposed to be representing your brand, is acting nutty in public and picking fights with billionaires, you have every right to distance yourself and take the better offer.
Weak justification for abandoning the entire machinery that built you into a pay-per-view star. You don't sever a 10-year relationship because someone gave a few loud interviews. Ben is biting the hand that fed him, and he's doing it to jump into bed with an organization that he himself criticized not long ago.
He's not biting the hand, he's shaking a new hand that holds a much bigger check. But let's talk about that destination, because you seem to think going to Zuffa is somehow a step down for him.
It is a step down, structurally speaking. Look at the landscape. Matchroom is the premier stable in the world. They have Anthony Joshua, they have Katie Taylor, they have the deep infrastructure. What does Zuffa Boxing actually have? Ben himself, in a video that surfaced recently, you've seen it, he criticized Zuffa's output. He called them apex shows in a garage in front of 130 people. He mocked their production value. Now suddenly he's the face of it. It reeks of hypocrisy. Zuffa doesn't have the talent pool yet. Yes, they signed Jay Opatea, but that's it. They are trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. And Matchroom was maneuvering him toward a legitimate world title shot. This move complicates the politics immensely, especially with Dana White explicitly wanting to sideline the traditional sanctioning bodies like the WBC and WBO. Ben says he wants legacy fights, but he just walked away from the one path that actually guarantees them.
That's a compelling argument on the surface, but have you considered that this is exactly the strategy? You don't build a massive talent pool by waiting around and playing nice. You build it by stealing the biggest stars from your rivals. Zuffa has the backing of TKO Group. They have Saudi money. They have the endless funds to make the fights that traditional promoters literally can't afford.
But they don't have the fighters.
Yet. And regarding the matchmaking, look at the reality of the board right now.
Benn is the mandatory for the WBC title. He wants the winner of Mario Barrios versus Ryan Garcia. There is a very real possibility, and industry insiders are already buzzing about this, that if Ryan Garcia wins, he could also be Lord of Zuffa. Or a massive co-promotion could happen. Imagine a Ryan Garcia versus Conor Benn fight under the Zuffa banner. That isn't a garage show. That is a global mega event. Dana White isn't signing Benn to fight in the Apex. He's signing him to sell out massive arenas without the bureaucratic red tape of the old boxing guard.
But you are relying entirely on hypotheticals. If Ryan Garcia comes over, if the production value suddenly improves, if the sanctioning bodies play ball. The reality is that Matchroom provided absolute certainty. This move to Zuffa feels less like a carefully plotted career strategy for Conor Benn and much more like a personal vendetta for Dana White.
Well, I love the aggression from Dana White. This is a clear message to Matchroom. We are not playing around.
Exactly. It's a message. It's a game of billionaire ego. Dana White isn't signing Benn because it fits a nice schedule. He's doing it to go for the jugular, to use Hawani's phrase again. He wants to actively hurt a rival. The war of words has escalated entirely out of the realm of sport. White mocking Hearn for working for his father, Hearn retorting about White working for a Turkey LL Sheikh. It's playground stuff, and Conor Benn is allowing himself to be used as a pawn in this promoter war. He's the ammunition here. He's not the general.
Look, if being a pawn comes with a $10 million signing bonus for one night of work, sign me up and point me to the chessboard. I completely disagree with the characterization that he's just being used. This shows Benn holds the power. Look at the actual statement Benn put out today. He specifically said he wants Eddie to continue to be part of my team.
Which is absurd. You cannot burn the bridge with a lawyer's letter, refuse a phone call, and then ask the man you just humiliated to walk across the ashes to carry your bags. It shows Benn knows he made a mistake, or at least feels guilty, and is trying to have it both ways. It's downright delusional to think Eddie Hearn would ever work as a subordinate to Dana White after this public embarrassment.
It's not delusional at all. It's a pure power move. It shows that Benn can dictate the terms of his own career now. If Hearn wants back in, and let's be honest, promoters always want a piece of the action if the money is big enough, he has to come on Benn's terms, and by extension, Zuffa's terms. It completely flips the script. Matchroom is no longer the gatekeeper. Conor Benn is his own gatekeeper.
I think you're overestimating his leverage, especially when you look at another crucial aspect of this deal that we need to scrutinize: the structure. It is a one-fight deal.
Which is the ultimate bet on oneself.
Or the ultimate risk of career suicide. A one-fight deal offers zero long-term security. If Benn loses his Zuffa debut, and remember, he's jumping into a completely new environment, new logistics, new pressure, he has burned his bridge with the biggest promoter in the UK. If he loses, his market value plummets, and he has absolutely no safety net. Matchroom offered a sustainable career path. Zuffa is offering a lottery ticket.
It is the complete opposite of a lottery ticket. It is the breaking of the slave contract model that has plagued combat sports for decades. Why should a fighter sign away 5 years of their athletic prime to one promoter? Benn can take the $10 million, win the fight, and then return to the open market with even higher value. He could re-sign with Zuffa for double or go somewhere else entirely. This is what true free agency looks like. It terrifies the establishment because it actually works. And let's not forget, Benn is coming off a massive career-defining win against Eubank Jr. He has the momentum. He isn't some desperate fighter looking for a quick payday. He is a proven winner demanding his actual worth.
But momentum is fragile in boxing. One punch changes everything. And isolation is dangerous. By refusing that phone call, by treating Eddie Hearn, the man who, I repeat, misjudged the character because he actually believed in Benn's goodness, by treating him as a disposable asset, Benn has isolated himself. He is now swimming in a shark tank with Dana White, a man who famously and ruthlessly cuts talent the moment they stop performing. He traded a loyal family for a ruthless factory.
He traded a boss for a business partner. That is the fundamental difference here. You see a family betrayed. I see a business arrangement that had simply run its course. Matchroom did a great job, sure. They rehabbed his image, but they didn't own him. And the shock we are seeing today from Hawani, from the fans on social media, from Hearn himself, is just the shock of the new. The boxing landscape has spun around 360 degrees in 24 hours. The rivalry is now total war, and Conor Benn is right at the center of it, exactly where a superstar should be.
Well, we can certainly agree that the landscape has irreversibly changed, but I fear the cost is just too high for the sport and the individual. To summarize my position on this, while the money is undeniable, the method of departure, the lawyer's letter, the silence, the refusal to grant a basic human courtesy to a man who put his own career on the line for you, it leaves an indelible stain on Conor Benn's character. He has traded a decade of trust for a quick payday, with a promoter who primarily views him as a weapon against a rival. He may be richer today, but in the eyes of the boxing purists, he is undeniably smaller.
And I will reaffirm that this is the most exciting shakeup in combat sports we've seen in years. Conor Benn hasn't shrunk at all. He has shattered the status quo. He has secured his financial future with an 8-figure check for a single night, and he has aligned himself with the absolute momentum of Zuffa and the TKO group. He hasn't outgrown his loyalty. He has outgrown the old system. He is betting on himself, taking the maximum risk for the maximum reward, and that is exactly what champions do.
The listeners will have to decide themselves if the price of this business disruption was worth the cost of that loyalty. The promotional war between Matchroom and Zuffa has officially begun, and Conor Benn just fired the first shot.
And I, for one, cannot wait to see who fires back.
That does it for this edition of The Debate. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Malcolm and Ella, for that. And, it's so funny. Conor Benn has got a lot, he's set for life with that contract, but he's not that good. He beat a weight-drained Chris Eubanks Jr. in the second fight. The first fight, it was a good fight, but, he's not that good. Conor Benn is not that good. He will be exposed by guys like Shakur Stevenson. He's just not that good a fighter, but, Dana White wants to throw that money at him. More power to him. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the debate. Now we're going to give us a little music here. We're going to do my group out here in Thailand. This is Jade Mystique, and we're going to play Coconut Soup on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. And that was Jade Mystique and a little bit of coconut soup on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. Group out here in Bangkok, Thailand. But we're going to get out of here right now. Hope you enjoyed.
The seconds are out. Thanks for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Please become a member at patreon.com under the title Ringside Fantasy Fights and News.